want to talk about Disney to round out the show a bit. And Disney apparently is panicking a little bit over the election of Donald Trump. They've seen the landscape of conservative, or at least people who are rejecting the left-leaning politics that they've kind of like hitched their wagon to, and they're trying to reorient. But what was really interesting is we have this article from That Park Place where it talks about Dana Walden, who is, I believe she's the head of ABC News right now, but she's also like a part of the ABC, like or Disney creative executive branch there. And what's interesting here is that she was basically the front runner to replace Bob Iger as Disney CEO. But then famously, she's like best friends with Kamala Harris. Like she's the one who introduced Kamala to her current husband. She was the one who basically orchestrated the ABC debate where basically everyone was fact-checking Trump and no one was fact-checking Kamala. And Trump famously called her out about this, right? And so with all the problems that Disney's had with like the Reedy Creek thing and in Florida with Governor Ron DeSantis and all this other stuff, it's believed that if Disney chooses her as their CEO, Trump is basically going to take that as a declaration of war and go after Disney hard. And this article at the Park Place was very, very interesting. But it's interesting in the sense that all of Hollywood, every studio seems to be reorienting based off of this historic win by Donald Trump. Whether you like him or hate the guy, you can't ignore the fact that the vast majority of Americans are on board with his agenda now. It's now cool to like Trump and talk about Trump and stuff like that. And all these Hollywood elitists are kind of like trying to figure out what's going on. Rob Reiner checked himself into like a mental health facility, all this other stuff to try to figure out, like what did I get wrong? What did I miss? Like what's going on here? So I'm going to get the panel's take on this. Rob, like you've kind of talked about how the core problem is with Disney. And I think that, basically putting this woman in charge of Disney would only exacerbate those problems because she seems very much in line with like the kooky liberal, like far left people who've been basically in charge of Disney's creative process and destroying everything. So what's your take on this? Do you think Disney should be worried about, playing nice with the Trump administration?
Well, I mean, look, I think that what we saw in the election is a referendum, in terms of here's what has bothered me. I've always considered myself a classical liberal that leans left. I have watched the left go insane and lose all sense of self and understanding of there's no connection to what people believe anymore and the actual real world that people live in. And it's been fascinating to me to watch. And one of the things that I've used to define this in my worldview is great stories. The reason I became a fan of storytelling in all of its myriad forms is because the best stories illuminate human truth and what it's like to live in the real world. And we, all of us, have been watching, quote unquote, what some people might call woke movies our entire lives. You go back to the 60s and you saw movies like In the Heat of the Night. You saw movies about combating racism. Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? These are movies that were made before I was born. There have always been great movies that dealt with social justice issues, which, by the way, were truthful. We now live in a world where all of that has been flipped around, and this agenda-based bastardization of social justice that is being pushed on people has been exclusionary in the extreme. You can't fight oppression by oppressing other people. You can't do it. And that's the world we live in now. We have one side that's flipped the script, and they're the people that are going to come at me with pitchforks and torches are the people I thought were on my side. They're the ones coming after me. And what we saw in this election is people pushing back against that. And I think people just got tired of the fact that I'm now paying 5 times as much for eggs as I paid 4 years ago. And the real world, no one is paying attention to what is actually happening in the real world and what we're being surrounded by. Iran running rampant because the Biden administration gave their money back to Iran. There's a lot, and I'm a registered Democrat, and I'm like, boy, I never thought that my allegiances would be so tested. They put up a candidate. There was no primary to put Kamala Harris forward as the candidate. These are things that are unacceptable from a political standpoint, and Disney should be terrified, to answer your question, because the American people trust in the American people, and if 50% or more, Trump won the popular vote by a wide margin. Now, I'm sorry, but are we going to spend another 4 years being combative of the administration? I think we all need to come together and figure out, if on one hand, I don't like the idea of putting the U.S. military on city streets to wind up to deport illegals. That ain't going to work, especially when half of our military is made up with people who have relatives or came over here with parents that might have been illegal. So there's going to be a lot of things that are going to happen that are effing crazy. But Disney has to realize that what they've been doing, they decided to fight a culture war that they're on the losing side of.
Yeah.
And the fact is, if you're going to do that, if you're going to pick a fight like that, and you're going to decide to side with a great minority of the population, I mean, you reap what you sow. And the fact is, I'm tired of seeing stories that have been bastardized by somebody else's political agenda, that basically people that want to oppress me. And I'm like, I've been nothing but tried to support everybody as I've moved through life, and now I've got forces from my own side that are coming after, that have vilified me, and it's like, F you. So I think that Disney is in a position where they should be fearful, because now is the time to start getting real and bring some common sense back into the way you do business. And you know what?
Well, I want to.
Your business was supporting the American family.
Yeah, real quick, Rob, because you're a populist. And I don't think that Republicans won, more so that populists won. And yes, Republicans won this last election, but the populist movement is what took over that party. And Democrats haven't figured that out yet. When you said Disney is on the losing side of the culture war, yeah, because it's the non-popular option. And
but they used to be. Disney was based on populism.
Yeah, but not anymore.
That company was built on populism. Walt Disney was a man who believed in making family entertainment that appealed to everybody.
100%. Yep.
Adults, and you go back and you look at Mary Poppins. That movie is delightful if you're a child and delightful if you're an adult. He made one of the great fantasy films of all time, which was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Disney doesn't even want to talk about. Where's that 4K disc? Why are they holding that up to the as being one of the great fantasy films of all time? They want to bury it because Walt was involved.
Bigger deal yet is his whole goal with Snow White was to show that adults could sit for over an hour and actually care about an animated character.
Yeah.
Well, I want to throw this to the biggest Disney shareholder on the panel, Brian. Brian, as someone who's so heavily invested in the Disney company, would you support Dana Walden as CEO? And if not, who would you want to see as CEO?
I want to see you got to Make America Great Again hat. That's awesome. I'll be honest with you guys, man. As culture war aside, my pocketbook's on the line, so I need whoever's gonna raise the stock. I don't think that she's the one to do it. I think that what we need is we need a populist in there. Someone like David Zaslav. Can we get someone like David Zaslav? Someone who cares about the bottom line and about what's popular for the business. And maybe you don't like David Zaslav, but the guy makes decisions based on what he thinks people are going to watch versus whatever the message is at the moment. So whether you like Zaslav or not, I mean, dude, he put James Gunn in charge of DC, and I like that a lot.
Hollywood has major ZDS right now. That's another problem.
What's that?
Hollywood hates Zaslav because they found out he was conservative. So they've been going hard in the paint at him ever since he took over.
And I don't really, and fine. I don't give a shit. Dude, he's making decisions that are based on what people want to watch versus whatever the message is. So if you ask me who I would want to be head of Disney, someone like that who is going to do what's best for the company versus what's best for whatever the current narrative is,
I just wanted to say, since we've been on this show, at 11:21 today, Deadline dropped an article that says the Thanksgiving 5-day U.S. box office has It is the largest box office gross ever
Awesome.
in the over the Thanksgiving weekend. It shattered the previous box office record that was set in 2018.
Before you adjust for inflation.
Well, yeah, but 2018 wasn't. Yes, before, but still, it's by a wide margin.
Yeah,
Right.
Not even close.
I have to throw that in. I'm the box
Red
office guy,
one.
so
Red
I was like,
one's
if I'm
doing
not talking
work.
about inflation or ticket prices, it's like I have
Well,
to.
it helps when you have about 4 or 5 movies in the theaters that
Yeah,
people
that's true.
actually
Yeah.
want to see.
But
Yeah.
it's $422 million for the week. That's insanity.
My kids are watching Moana 2 right now.
Yeah,
That movie
and-
alone is going to be one of the biggest
That's
in
huge,
several
yeah.
years.
Well,
And
what's sadder, Robert, is that's following up 3 of probably the worst weekends we had prior
Yeah.
to
sure,
Wicked.
sure. But I mean, it's like the last time, the biggest was 315.6 back in 2018. So it's over $100 million more, even if you adjust for inflation. That is a huge win for Hollywood. And it shows that if you make populist movies that people want to see, people still will go to the movies.
Well, speaking of populist movies, I want to throw this to Odin because Odin, you are a teacher of the youth. You're a man of faith, and part of the thing in this article is that Disney is trying to figure out how to appeal to conservative families once more because they've gone so far afield with their woke agenda, woke propaganda, whatever you want to call it, that they've alienated a lot of their core fan base, which was basically families who just want to sit their kids in front of something, have them take away a nice moral lesson and not radicalize them in one direction or the other. So what do you think about Disney's efforts to try to kind of like reorient towards more conservative family fare?
Well, I mean, they just need to refocus back to, as what was being said before. I think Rob made a great point here about, back to an actual populist viewpoint, right? Because ultimately, all Hollywood studios should be populist because they should care about what's going to make the most money. Like as a company, as a studio, one of your key jobs is to make money off of the products that you make. Now, again, art is a part of it, of course. You want to bring in people that are artistically talented. You want to bring in people that actually have a vision for things, but you also want it to be a vision that's going to make you some money, right? Because you can't, you have to, if you're going to spend money, you obviously want to make that money back and make some more, so that way you can fund more projects into the future and be able to pay for the marketing and all those other things, right? And it really reminds me of that quote from Michael Jordan, right? Where it's like, hey, Republicans buy shoes too. And so it's like, that's the reason why you have to, when you make your movies, not come at it from this activist lens, because ultimately Disney, as well as these other companies, have been taken over by activists. And that's why these films have been so bad. And that's why people have not been going to see these movies, because no one wants to be preached to. No one wants to see a movie that has a very clear political agenda to it. People want to go to an apolitical or as apolitical of a movie as you possibly can. And if you do have a creative mind who might have some of their own political motivations, at the very least, the story should be presented in a way to where you don't see that. And one of the one of the main issues of today is obviously because we also have a social media sphere where people who are in the creative space now put their ideas out, their political ideas and motivations out there too. And so now it's a lot harder in like the promotion of a movie to kind of completely disconnect it. But in the marketing, you could absolutely focus it, because most people don't know about this stuff. Even if an actor is spouting these things off, most just don't know, because most are outside of that space. So they need to reshift there.
Well, you look at someone like a Tom Cruise. Obviously he's going to deliver what might be the final Mission Impossible movie. I think one of the things about Tom Cruise as a movie star is he makes populist movies by definition. Do you know what Tom Cruise's politics are? We don't, because he stays away from that sphere. He's if you look at, like somebody in the chat was talking about, is Top Gun Maverick a populist movie? I think it defines populist movie. That movie made $1.5 billion because Tom Cruise knew exactly what the audience wanted.
Yeah.
And while I didn't love Dead Reckoning, the Mission Impossible franchise as a franchise is fun populist entertainment that I don't think offends anybody's sensibilities, but delivers the entertainment value that we want for our entertainment dollar.
I've been saying for years that all I want to do when I go to a movie theater is be entertained. I don't care what these people's politics are. If people like Mark Hamill would just shut the fuck up and entertain people, it would be so much better. The world would be so much better. When Harrison Ford came out earlier this year and was endorsed Biden, I was like, Why? Why did you do that? Because, I don't care what his politics are, but the temperature of the political world right now is so hot on either side that it immediately made me not care as much about Harrison Ford movies going forward. And I love that guy. That guy is like my favorite actor ever to be on the face of the planet. And he had to go out there and pick a team. It was really disappointing to me, and I want these guys to just, to be crude. I just want them to dance for me and entertain. I don't care what their politics are. And I think they hurt their product when they go out there and they pick
100%.
a team. And I don't want that. I don't want The Rock to go out there and declare his love for progressive ideologies. I want
to be fair,
I want The Rock to go out there and drive
Actually,
fast
he
cars and
did.
kick people's asses. That's what I want The Rock to do.
Right.
So
Entertain us.
entertain us.
He did,
well-
but he regretted it.
But
Right,
don't,
yeah,
look,
exactly.
I don't think we should I want every person that lives in this country to have a political idea and get out and vote. I
Mhm.
want I don't care what their job is, but the problem is if you choose to work in the public sphere and
Mhm.
you choose to be an entertainer, you're not just entertaining half the country. The idea
Right.
would be to entertain everybody. And movies are supposed to look, movie theaters. One of the things I've always loved about movie theaters is you have people of all shapes, size, colors, and creeds, sexualities, religious beliefs, all different people come together in one room. You're sitting next to perfect strangers on an opening night when a Marvel movie opens, the lights come down. Do you care what the political ideology or the sexuality or the religious affiliate, whatever of the
right.
people sitting next to you? No, you're all there for the same reason. It is the most unifying thing in the world to
Mhm.
go into a movie theater and the lights come down and you're all there to experience the same story.
And then there's guys who like not Robert Downey Jr., but I can't think of his name. I'm sorry, but yeah,
Christopher Pratt.
no, the mobster movie guys.
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro, who's one of my favorite actors of all
Yeah.
time, goes up on the Oscar awards and says, "Fuck Donald Trump." I'm like, oh, why? Why did you just
What a
do that?
bad business decision.
Well, you got to give him a pass because he's lived in New York.
Oh,
A lot of New Yorkers don't like Donald Trump.
right.
That goes way back before he
But-
was a political candidate.
And that was years. That was
Yeah,
like
but what
5,
I
6
think
years ago now.
What I think
But-
Dutch is talking about is how bad that Robert's just showing how just disassociated he
Yeah.
is with everything.
And it's not just
also
him, it's all these
a lot
people.
of New Yorkers, a lot of the New York elite loved Trump before he ran for president.
Well,
so-
and I want
Right.
to say something about what Robert just said too. And one thing I've never heard anybody say is, "I'm going to see this movie because it has a black woman in it." I'm
No.
going to see this movie because it has a trans person in it.
No one's
Yeah.
ever said that.
No, I've heard somebody say, "I'm going to see this because it's an Eddie Murphy movie," or "I'm going to see this
Sure.
because it's a Tom Cruise movie," or a Julia Roberts movie,
Right.
or insert your actor here. But it's never been about sex. It's never
I'll go
been
see
about
any movie
race.
Angela Bassett's in. Just want to
See?
say.
See, that's my point. It has nothing to do with her race, though. It has to do with the fact that you love her as an actress, though, right? Like that's the
Yes.
whole point.
I
And
love
never
Angela
thought of
Bassett can do
actors
no
like
wrong.
that. Like growing up, and I've said this a million times before, the biggest actors in the world were like Eddie Murphy, Bill Cosby on television, right? Michael Jackson was the #1 artist in the world. Prince probably second to him. Madonna right next to that. So I mean, like diversity is all over the place. I grew up with movies by like John Waters and other shit like that. He's like my gay Uncle John. We all love him. Like what the hell is this crap?
Tom, I want to ask you, because out of all the movie studios, Disney/ABC seems to be the most worried about Trump, and Trump probably has the biggest bone.
I would be too.
Him. And in
Disney.
fact, he's actually threatened to take away ABC's broadcast license because they're not actual news.
Look,
they're
I went to
propaganda.
school and they have broken a few FCC rules. I'll tell you that right now. And honestly, if they really wanted to bring the hammer down, all of the networks have broken a lot of fucking rules. The only ones that haven't have been the ones like Fox and stuff that are actually registered as non-news but entertainment. Because I'll tell you right now, that's why The View has to stop every 5 minutes and correct themselves. Because I have never seen this shit in my life. Right?
the legal notes. It's so much.
The legal note. Yeah, because you can't just go out there and do this shit. You can't. And they're doing it. They've been doing it for 10 years.